Shalom, giving all honor, all praise, and all glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rechak Double honor to the elder apostles and bishops of the great millstone that rule well. And as always, peace, blessings, and salutations to the old full like tabernacle of David scattered abroad across the four winds of the earth. And of course, just to start off, I'm going to quote Yahushai, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. There's no order in the earth anymore. The law, statutes, commandments that would normally govern a righteous society. It's obsolete. It's not enforced. The law slacked. So that's why people just do what the hell they want. It's just chaos. And its behavior is going to continue to be out of control because there's no order. Thanks to the man of sin, the man of lawlessness. He has his own laws, but it's definitely not the laws coming from the book. All right, so this is why you have this behavior in the earth. It also tells us in 2nd Ezra, the 5th chapter, that iniquity shall abound, shall be increased. So what do you have right now? People just out of control. People just crashing out. People just not thinking things through before they act. And it's very, very dangerous. For in the last days, perilous times shall come. And I've been, for the past year or so, I've never seen this many family incidents where you have children rising up against parents and parents rising up against their own flesh and blood. I haven't seen it, like back when I was coming up in the 90s and the early 2000s. It was nowhere near like this. It was nowhere near like this. It seemed like it only started getting this way the last few years, man. And it's absurd. But, we have to be at that final generation, because if you got to raise a child in this society, in this current generation, it's very vexing. I just had a daughter, and I'll be praying that society doesn't get through to my daughter. I know I got to do what the scriptures say and keep her in straightly, because it's getting crazy out here. All right, but anyway, this is a story based in Florida, where a father got arrested because he had a dispute with his own sons, and he might have been a bit hot-headed. He seemed to be, based on the reports, and I know not to trust solely in mainstream media, because they tend to be biased. They usually push propaganda. They like to push certain narratives. So it can be, one way is being presented through the media, but in reality, it can be some completely different. And the guy that they are suspecting, that's supposed to be the suspect in this situation, he can be innocent. He can have reason or cause to why he did what he did. But they don't give you that they don't give you that grace. Especially if you a Jake, you automatically guilty. You're an animal. Lock him up. All right. But anyway, I'm gonna play this news segment so you see what's going on. All right, Jake got into a dispute with his own sons that led to, a shooting, and now he's locked up, and there's no telling what went down. All right, and knowing the times that we're in, and knowing this current generation, a lot of I'll say Jake in particular, the young boys in this generation, they have no respect for their parents. And especially if you was raised by your mom, your mother, all right, without your father, even if your father, he attempted, he endeavored to be in your life, but your mother made it hard for him to be around. She'll still put the ideas in your head that your father ain't shit and he didn't want to be around. He didn't want to take care of his responsibilities. And she ain't gonna tell you, that he tried. He ain't gonna tell you about the custody wars in the court. She's not gonna tell you anything. You got to figure it out later when you're older. But anyway, the relationships between sons and fathers, it's in shambles. You can thank the serpent for this though, because he set up this system to create that division in the family. It was all systematically designed. All right. So there's another reason why this devil got to pay. But anyway, let's look at this, and then we'll get a few precepts and we'll close out. I'm not going to make this a long video.
3 sons. Amazingly, they all survived. It happened along sunlit Coral Street in Ruskin. And Fox 13's Evan Moon is live outside the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office for us tonight. Evan, what happened here?
Just a crazy story. Investigators tell us that Christopher Brown and his sons got into an argument over a car that ended up in shots fired at his own 3 children. Luckily, they're all okay. We spoke with some neighbors out there today. 3 kids shot by their own father. Now that man faces potential life in prison.
When you look at the facts of this case, we know this defendant did everything he could do to try and kill his children.
A fight between the family broke out Sunday morning around 11 a.m. outside the home in Ruskin.
A lot of people that's been responding to this story, they all been reciting the same quote. The saying is, I brought you into this world and I will surely take you out. That's pretty much the sentiment of the father. Like, I brought y'all in, I'll take all y'all out. All 3 of y'all. That's probably how he felt. There's no telling what happened though, or what transpired, what led up to it escalating to that point for him to want to, attempt to, take his own sons out. If he was just wilding and he's just crashing out and got spirits on him, then, that's one thing. Get him away from society in general. But we don't know the whole story. We don't know his side of the story. We don't know anything. We just know that this was an incident that happened. And right now, he's being looked at like the animal that they usually portray Jake as, when he's aggressive or he's guilty, of a particular crime or action.
Sheriff's Office saying the fight was about a car. 36-year-old Christopher Brown hit one of his 3 kids in the head with a gun, causing the gun to fire and graze the child's ear and jaw.
His first child, he pistol whips him. After pistol whipping, he takes out his gun and shoots him, missing his body but hitting him in the earlobe, striking his ear.
With one boy shot, the other 2 brothers ran at their dad as he tried to get into his car. But investigators say Brown then fired several rounds at his other 2 sons.
Well, he's 36 years old, and I'm pretty sure his sons were probably in their teenage years. Oldest is probably 18, 17, 19, grown ass fucking boy. All right, you grown man. They got adult male strength. You might think you can best your own son, and he might raise up and have the strength you didn't think he had, and lay your ass out. So he probably wasn't trying to chance it, and there's 3 of them. So you never know, but yeah, it shouldn't have to get to this over no vehicle, over no car. But our people, they don't have any reasoning skills. They don't know how to reason. They're just very reactionary, and that's due to them being raised by a woman. The Jake that had them sons, he probably wasn't raised by a man. you know. But you're not going to tolerate your own sons, being aggressive with you. That's one thing for sure. As a man, you're not gonna tend or even tolerate that. Now the scriptures say, and we all know this. Let's go to scripture here in the Apocrypha. Let's go to Sirach. And I believe it's the 30th chapter. Yeah, Sirach 30 in verse I'll start at verse 7. It says, "He that maketh too much of his son shall bind up his wounds, and his bowels will be troubled at every cry. On a horse not broken becometh headstrong." He'll start to get stubborn and get bold with you. So you got to, break it down early. Get on their head early, man, so that they can learn to fear and have respect. It says, "And a child left to himself will be willful." And usually that happens when they're, under their mother's care. Because if the children are just under her care, what time is she going to spend with them? She usually have to work herself. So he's at, school, he's under the school's care. They got these after school programs. You might leave him with the youth pastors at the church on a Sunday. But they ain't getting no proper guidance and tutelage and instruction and discipline. The streets is pretty much raising them. So they become willful. They start to feel like they could do what they want to do. And the woman, she'll cuss him out, but she'll cuss him out because she hates his father. Not instilling the discipline in a proper fashion, making him understand why, that child is wrong. It says, "Conquer thy child, and he shall make thee afraid. Play with him, and he will bring thee to heaviness." And you ain't supposed to play with him. All right, you don't play with none of them. It's not cute. But in this day and age, you have that going on. The women will treat their daughters like they little homegirl. Or they'll raise their sons, and their sons is like they little. It's sad, man. So that's why you gotta deal with them in their early stages, and like the scriptures say, train up a child in the way that he should go. Then when he gets older, he will not depart. It says, "Laugh not with them, lest thou have sorrow with them, lest thou gnash thy teeth in the end. Give him no liberty in his youth, and weak not at his follies. Bow down his neck while he is young, and beat him on the sides while he is a child, lest he wax stubborn and be disobedient unto thee, and so bring sorrow to thine heart." That's what you'll have on your hands. A stubborn ass, hard-headed, knucklehead, because he didn't receive the proper discipline. Now he out there in them streets getting into stuff, and you can't control him. And he'll even raise up at you in your own crib, and you the one that, took care of him. So, yeah, man. That's what's missing in the household. And that's what usually lead to these type of situations.
Both were hit and taken to Tampa General Hospital. Thankfully, all three boys survived. One neighbor saw it all unfold on his Ring camera.
Our camera was blowing up. I look and I see about 5 police officers, a paramedic, people running around. Text messages start blowing up, seeing like, are we safe? What's going on? So, real crazy situation.
And several neighbors say it wasn't the first time Brown and his boys had issues.
I have small children, like not even feeling safe to do what normal kids do and just run up and down the street without worrying about fights breaking out, gunshots breaking out.
Court documents show one child had a digital recording, what may have been a voicemail afterwards from the dad that said, quote, "I tried to take your life. You won't make it to Wednesday." Now the state attorney filed a pretrial motion to keep Brown behind bars until his trial.
He's a threat to the community.
Yeah, psychologically something might be off with dude. But at the same time, you just don't know what causes that, man. We know Jake under the curse, and they up under a lot of pressure here. And children, they don't normally appreciate until later, when they mature. So there's no telling what broke this dude to cause him to crash out the way he's crashing out. And that little moment, not gathering himself, not thinking straight, it caused him to, end up where he is currently. And that's why the scriptures talk about, having a rule over your spirit, having self-control. He that have no rule over his spirit is like a broken city without bars. Anything can infiltrate your mind and cause you to do something crazy. Because you emotionally unstable. You got to study into people's psyche, man. See what, understand, what the causes are. And it doesn't excuse his behavior, but at the same time, hey. And if there's any cases of his sons being aggressive towards him, I would understand that. And if we go to the law on it, if it don't matter whether you're a son or daughter, no matter how old you are, you disrespect your parents, the Most High, he has no tolerance for that. The scriptures say to honor your father and your mother. All right. And in this society, they don't do that. Was that 2 Timothy 3, for they shall be disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy. Now, this law right here states if you even strike your parent, your father or your mother, you're supposed to be put to death. Exodus 21:15, it says, "And he that smiteth his father or his mother shall be surely put to death." All right. And then verse 17, "And he that curseth his father or his mother shall surely be put to death." So that's how much respect you're supposed to have for them, no matter how you feel about them. They probably, a lot of Jake parenting skills is not respected because, Jake, they were kids when they had kids, and they didn't get the proper guidance and the discipline and the instruction. All right. And they end up having children and they don't know how to raise children. And the cycle continues. But Jake grew up not respecting, their parents. Hey, when I saw my woman going through labor and going through the pain and going through what she went through to push my daughter out, I was like, yeah, you definitely got to respect, motherhood, even though that dynamic was caused by what Eve did. That's why y'all got to go through all that. But for you to go through that, to push them out, for them to be brought into the world, you definitely owe at least that respect. You're supposed to honor them. The same with your father, man. He has to be the one to raise you and then guide you and instruct you. Respect him. So you put hands on him or her, hey, you got to be put down. All right. And there's, other scriptures that I can go to, but I wanted to go to those ones, and not to forget the one in Deuteronomy 21. The parents, they're trying to deal with a stubborn, disobedient son, who's gluttonous and lazy and don't want to do anything. And they discipline him and it ain't working. He got to go and they got to make make the complaint to the elders in the city, and they got to drag his ass, in front of everybody, and they got to stone him and put him to death. And that's to put away evil from among us. All these little monsters, these little, bastards out here, man, running wild, doing what the hell they doing. Cussing up a storm, disrespecting their elders. Getting a hold of guns and toting them. And Jake and their foolery and their because Jake is they're wild out there, man. They'll allow their children to do this and think that it's cute and even put it on social media. So really, this whole generation, they gotta go. They gotta go, man. That's why 2/3, 2 parts shall be cut off and die. Okay. All these wicked Jakes that you see, just bugging out and doing all this wickedness, they all gonna have to just come back on the other side. Let the multitude therein perish who was born in vain, but keep the grape of the cluster. They got to come back on the next go around because they just ain't right. So yeah, man, this is unfortunate, but this is what's going on, and this behavior is because iniquity is abounding. All right, lawlessness is increasing, so the love of many is waxing cold. All right, so this is just part of the dismantling of this current society until it completely goes down. So anyway, I'm going to give all honor, praise, and glory to Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Shalom.